Welcome to the Not Just Waiting podcast. I'm your host, Rihanna Hoffman, and this is a space for women learning to wait well and live fully. Whether you're in the middle of uncertainty, transition, or just figuring out what's next, this podcast is here to remind you you are not behind, not forgotten, and definitely not just waiting. Let's dig into truth, grow in courage, and hold on to hope together. Hey friends, welcome back to the Not Just Waiting podcast. Today I'm joined by Jen Preston, a wife of 27 years, mom of 2 adult daughters, proud mother-in-law, and the joyful grandma to a sweet 10-month-old granddaughter. Jen officially stepped into coaching 3 years ago and launched her business 2 years ago, helping others grow with intention and courage. And in a beautiful act of obedience and continued becoming, she recently went back to school to pursue her master's in counseling. Jen's story is such a reminder that growth doesn't have an expiration date. There is always room to say yes again, to learn again, and to step into what God is unfolding in the season. I cannot wait for you to hear her heart. Let's dive in. Hey friends, welcome back to the Not Just Waiting podcast. I am so excited that you guys are here, and I get to introduce you to Jen. Now, Jen, I don't think we realized who we were when we met the first time.
100%. I would agree. I remember, I think you're talking about like a Sunday night when we were standing, it's like we're looking at each other, smiling and like, okay, like polite smile. And then the next day it's like, oh my goodness, I know you. Like we know each other. So yes, I definitely felt that. So it makes me feel better that you felt it too, because I felt bad. But then I was so excited when I was like, wait, I know her.
So funny. The day we're talking about, we went to a coaching retreat. We're both going telehouse coaches. And on Sunday night before the retreat, they tell all the previous coaches, hey, if you want to meet up at this place, come meet up. So I had just driven in like 7 hours. I get out of my car, have no time to change, and it's raining. And so we're trying to find where the head honchos are, and they're nowhere to be found. And we're in this outside venue, and it's raining and very cold. It was cold for me, at least. It may not have been cold for everybody else. I was cold. And we're like awkwardly staring at each other because we all see each other maybe once a year. And there's coaches from different years that were certified. So Jen and I were certified the same year. But we were with a lot of other coaches that were after us and before us that we hadn't met other than the one time that we got certified, maybe. And at that point, when you're getting your certification and you're trying to get everything situated, you're so nervous. You don't remember anybody's name or their face, and you just look them up on Instagram when you leave. So I was standing from afar, and there were a couple ladies that I knew. And I'm like, I bet that's Jen Preston. But I didn't get to say hello to you because there were a few of us, but a lot of us. And we were all very huddled together because I was very cold.
It's very true. I agree. And I come from Oregon and it had been cold and rainy, but it was ridiculously cold and rainy in South Carolina. So I was a little disappointed because I wanted warm weather, but I thought the same thing. I went back to my Airbnb that night and I was like, oh, I'm so sad. Like, I know her. Like, why did, so I was so glad that was the start of our time together. So then the next couple of days we really could connect and see each other and chat and catch up. So I was grateful for that.
Absolutely. Maybe next time Charleston will decide to be warm.
Please let it be.
It's on the beach. It's supposed to be warm.
Yes, 100%.
Well, I don't know if you know, but right now on the podcast are talking about becoming. And a lot of what we talk about is waiting, but we're kind of coming to the realization that waiting isn't actually our final destination. It's who we're becoming while we're waiting. That's what the Lord wants of us. So we're going to jump in a conversation if that's cool with you and go ahead and get started.
That sounds great. I'm super excited. Thank you.
Awesome. So question 1. Who do you sense God has been forming you into in this season, especially in ways that weren't visible or celebrated?
Thinking about this, the first thing that came to mind that I'll be honest, I didn't love was humility. Because I had to redefine what some things look like, what God was calling me to, all of those pieces. And so it really, in this becoming process, was this sense of humility and who God intended me to be, what that looked like, was I willing and obedient to take a step back and go, it won't look the way I thought it would, but it doesn't mean it's not from God. And so that I will say was tough. I don't know that I think we value humility, but I don't think we celebrate it. And so that is one of those, I think we look at it and go, oh, we know that's a good thing, but it doesn't always feel good. And so that, and then my other thing was just renewed purpose. So in that sense of having to have some humility and relook at what God had in store, what he intended, what his plan versus my plan. Um, Really this renewed purpose. Like God has just given me this like, okay, it doesn't always look the way you thought, but it's part of my plan. And so you still have a purpose and it can be the same, but I'm also going to renew things in you as you move forward. And so I'm grateful for that, even when it's difficult.
Yeah. When you were talking about being renewed, my brain, like, pictured spring because it's coming. Um,
It
and
is. Wait, those flowers are popping up.
well, I hope so. But when we renew, a lot of times when plants are being renewed, they're under the ground. And it's not the part that anybody sees, but they have to be renewed or they won't grow again. And so when you're talking about a season that wasn't visible or celebrated, I mean, we're hoping that I'm like hoping the flowers that are behind my house are getting their lives together so that they can bloom in a couple weeks. But I can't see that. I can't put a microscope or a magnifying glass under the soil to see what they're doing. And I love that you made that your thing that wasn't visible because it's happening and you know it's happening, but it like I wouldn't know that looking from the outside in.
Yeah,
I think it's
exactly. And
cool.
I love the example of spring flowers because it's so true. It's like if we're not doing that work underneath, what comes to fruition, what comes into bloom is not going to be the same.
Yeah. I have a practical question.
Okay.
So, when you were talking about humility, what does that look like for you? I asked this because we had a conversation last night with some guys and gals, and there was all the ages, and they said the word humility, and I know every single one of us thought something different.
Um yeah, for me, humility and this is kind of something we may talk about a little bit later, but for me, humility was really redefining what success and failure looked like. And then accepting it. So I had to redefine what that looked like, what that meant in terms of God's plan for my life, for my family, um, and then accepting that that's what it was. And especially when it was different from what I thought, different from what I had hoped and different from what I had dreamed, and also different from what I thought God had originally laid out. And not because I thought it was wrong what God had, or that I got it wrong, but just that God changed how it was going to happen. And so I think accepting that that looks different was a big part of humility for me.
Ooh, my toes hurt. Thanks.
I'm
we
trying not
were
to cry. Your toes hurt. I'm trying not to cry.
Uh, it's so true though. Like today I was in a class, I'm going to call it a class, and they were asking us what were one of our fears or what was our fears in regard to our calling. And they're like, just write it down. So I'm like bullet pointing because I try not to get very deep because then I get very far and it doesn't go very quickly. And so I'm going and all of a sudden it goes, what if I'm wrong? And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was there. I okay, fun. We're going to figure this out because in my experience, my limited experience, but in my experience so far of being wrong, quote unquote, multiple times with what my calling was, I'm like, Lord, I don't want to start over again.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
That
when
is so true. That is so good.
so you're sitting here talking about humility and redefining success and failure and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Because there is a piece of what if I got it wrong? I don't want to think God got it wrong. And so I have to accept that it just looks different. And that's the hard part, I think. At least for me, that's the hard part, accepting that it looks different.
I agree. And I think that's part of the becoming aspect. When I first got married, the quote, it's not wrong, it's just different, was our saving grace. for like the first 2 whole years, like extent of it's not wrong, it's just different because my husband is very culturally different from me. So even down to how we make spaghetti is different. And when you're talking about like the Lord's not wrong, but it's also that becoming, He would take us to places where we can be wrong so that we can come to the realization that our success is the wrong type of success.
Yes. Yes. 100%. I wanna print that quote now and, like, put it on my wall. So I like that. Yeah. It's just different. It's just different.
Right. Mm. Talking about seasons and becoming and things being different. Was there a season where God seemed more focused on shaping your character than advancing your calling? And what did that form in you?
I'm gonna say this one feels hard for me, and I will say it's because it feels like it's happening right now. I wanted it to be let me talk about something, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Oh, and this is great. Now I'm on the other side, but I feel like it's where I'm at right now. Um, really, like I was saying, that idea of calling, like, I don't think I got it wrong, and God didn't do it wrong, but it looks different, and that's really hard. And so, when I thought about that, I actually started looking up character traits, and I was like, okay, God, like, what are you teaching me? Like, I need to see the words in front of me. And a couple of things stuck out to me. And one was courageous, having courage. And I will say I am known for, it's kind of a joke, I'm risk adverse. Like, so yes, so I want to be a big talker, but really I'm risk adverse. I like to know that it's all going to work out. I planned it. I see all the obstacles and no. And so I've really had to step out in courage just recently. I've had to be honest with what God has called me to, what God is asking of me, and be honest with how I feel about that. So I've had to be honest with not just the fears, but maybe going, I know you give us the desires of our heart. I know you're the one that places those desires in our heart, but it's feeling not 100% in line right now. It's feeling like my desire may have been a little different. So I'm waiting for my heart to catch up with you, God. And I believe it will, but I'm having to be honest with how I feel about that shift. And then being curious what God is doing. I probably wouldn't have admitted this too long ago, but I will now, as a 50-year-old woman, this is not the stage I thought I would be at. And so learning to be curious and open and even being willing to start over as God is asking me to has really been stretching. And I feel like that's a lot of what he's doing right now in this season of life for me.
Yeah. And that's like really brave to start over at any age because you're so, I don't want to say accustomed, but you have honed a craft to this point.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what the craft was, you have honed something to this point. You know everything there is to know about it. And you're starting over and you kind of feel like a toddler. I don't know if that's how you feel. I feel that way. But I'm like,
Yes.
I'm 3 and trying to figure out how the world works again. So that's super
Yes.
brave. I have a question.
Okay.
You were talking about figuring out your feelings about it, something to that nature. How do you do that?
um I joke and my kids would joke as well. I cry. That's I let that out. I am definitely not repressed emotionally. So a lot of crying. I am also a verbal processor. And so I have had to find it's a balance for me. So, because I'm a verbal processor, I love to sit and talk either with my husband or a really good friend and kind of, have that banter back and forth of what God is doing, how I feel about it, what that could mean, all those pieces. And I think that's good and valuable. And I also have to stop and verbally process with the Lord. Even though I can't audibly hear him back, to be able to go, okay, Lord, I'm going to talk this through with you, and being really honest and open with the Lord and saying, I don't love how this feels right now. I'm disappointed. I'm hurt. I'm scared. Um, all of those pieces still just saying, "Hey, you know, God, I know you already know this about my heart, but I've got to say it out loud to you. Even though you know it, I'm going to say it out loud and then I'm going to trust you with that." Um, it, instead of saying, "Yeah, oh, this is great. I know God has a purpose." Yes, I know that in reality in my head, but my heart still hurts.
Yeah. Does the risk averse part of your brain find that scary?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
I feel like I'm looking at a mirror. Um,
Yes. 100%. 100%.
ugh. Also a verbal processor, but I don't get to verbally process as often. I'm usually the receiving end of the verbal processing. So my poor husband gets me verbally processing at 12:30 when we've laid in the bed. And he's like, "It's sleepy sleep time." I'm like, "But I haven't talked to a real person today." So bless him. But I love that you were making a point to verbally process with the Lord. And I guess saying it out loud is the scary part for me when it comes to like the fears and the anxieties and the feelings. Because when you say it out loud, it makes it real in whatever capacity that is. I know we're talking about a lot of it in like calling and business world related stuff and coaching and existing. And you're like, "Oh, I'm scared about this thing, but I haven't told anybody this." And once you say it out loud, it's real. But when you get to make it real with the Lord, I think it's much safer. But my risk averse brain has not processed that the Lord and my husband and this random person is different. So I find that
Yes.
interesting.
It feels I feel like going to the Lord and verbalizing it just helps solidify it, and it does feel scarier because, like I said before, there's this part where I know the Lord knows me better than anyone else, better than my husband, better than my best friend, better than my children. The Lord knows me deeply. He knows my innermost being and my innermost thoughts, but to say them out loud feels very exposing, and I don't always want to do that, and I can protect myself from other people. I don't have to verbally process that one piece. I can always hold a piece back. But if I'm willing to expose that honestly with the Lord, I know He will be delicate and kind with it.
Hmm, it's so true because he's good and he loves us and he wants what's best for us, even when my brain forgets that.
Amen.
We've talked about feelings and things and processing and verbally processing, but has there been things that you've had to release? So, have you had to release expectations, timelines, your identity in order to become who God is inviting you to be now?
How much time do we have and how many things can I tell you? It felt like I had to release so many things. Um, Definitely my own expectations, like my own expectations of myself, what that would look like. But like I had even said earlier, really releasing what success and failure looked like for me. And I feel very fortunate that I have very supportive people around me. And I know not everyone has that. So I'm grateful as the Lord has moved me in different directions. The people in my life have always been supportive of it and cheerleading, like, "Yeah, great, do it, do it, do it." And yet for myself, I've had to sit there and go, "Oh, but does that mean I failed? Like, if I'm starting over, does that mean failure?" And redefining that starting over doesn't mean I failed at what was before. It means God's doing something new. It means my heart has shifted. It means I have matured and grown. It can mean so many things. So I really had to change that definition for myself. That was one big thing I had to release, and in that was, I wouldn't say others' expectations, but being concerned about what others thought of me. So when I had, went to say, "Oh, here's my next new thing," I was so worried. Are people gonna be like, "Oh, here she goes again. Here's something else new. Here's something," and again, is it because I got it wrong the last time? Or is it because I've grown and God shifted? Um, and God doesn't need me to defend him by any means. He does not need me to defend him, but I want to. You feel like this person who is so tightly tied to who you are, that I wanted to defend, like, God's doing a new thing again. And it's exciting and it's scary and it's amazing. and it's okay.
Yeah. As you were talking, the flower analogy that we have from earlier came back, and there's a season aspect to it. Like right now, I'm ready for the spring to come on and get here. But in those seasons, like the Lord in winter, we have to rest, and then we get to start something new, and then He makes it ginormous and pretty, and then we get to harvest, and then we get to start over again. And we watch that every single year outside our windows. And I think we forget that that's supposed to happen in us too. Because if we're still growing and growing and growing and never harvesting, we aren't a very good plant.
So true. So I love that so much. I think of also like, bears. I guess comparing us to seasons and flowers is nicer, but like how they hibernate. And that's okay. There has to be this renewal and this rest and then that starting over. And that's good. That's how they're strong and able to care for themselves. And and we probably haven't given enough value to that um resting, what's going on under the soil, all of those pieces to be renewed again.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if it's just specifically as women, but we are taught at very young ages that you don't get to slow down. Like the first, I guess, month that we got married. So grew up in Deep South. My husband is from Virginia, but his parents are from like New England area. So in my house, I was not allowed to sit down after dinner until everything was cleaned up, all the dishes were in the dishwasher, and everything was done. And my mom sat down. That was the other caveat. I couldn't sit down until my mom sat down, which was annoying, Mom, because I know you're listening, because she had to do 17 million things. Like, she had 3 kids, she had a husband, she worked full time for the second half of my childhood. So, like, she was trying to do X number of things, and my dad's rule was I could not sit down until my mom sat down. So the first 2 weeks that we got married, I was not sitting down until the kitchen was spotless. Like you could see my reflection on the sink. And my husband walks in and goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just cleaning the kitchen." He's like, "Again, what are you doing? Like you've already cooked. You wouldn't let me load the dishwasher because allegedly I do it wrong, which is a little true. But he's like, I'll
Not
do this."
wrong, just different. Not
Oh,
wrong,
that
just
was our saving grace. That was one of those things. That and spaghetti and some other things. Dishwasher was definitely one of them. And he's like, "Come sit by me and rest. I want to hang out with you, but until you come sit down, I can't do that." And so I think, at least in my own personal life, that when we have to start over, it does feel like a failure because somehow we haven't achieved the expectation that was set from somebody else. Because I definitely don't have the expectation that I don't sit down in my own house. Like, that's a little weird.
yeah,
It's just
I
wild.
think I definitely agree with you. I think women in general in the church we've kind of been taught that or modeled that, even if it wasn't in words. We've also been modeled that. Um and also just realizing like as I've gotten older, this idea of busy doesn't equal good or better or and I really thought that for so long. It was like, well, I can't be idle because something's wrong or I don't have enough to do or somehow I'm failing or not measuring up. But you know busy is not what gives us our worth and our value. And so it's okay if there's a lull and then a start over, and there's a lot of value in those times.
Yeah. And I think there's an aspect to waiting that we miss. So, here on the podcast, we joke about active waiting and passive waiting. And we talk about how passive waiting for Rihanna is sitting on her couch eating peanut butter cookies and watching Netflix for days on end. It's rest, but I probably shouldn't be doing that for days. A couple episodes, yeah, go for it. But then we have active rest or active waiting, which I guess would be akin to the busy aspect. And there's a necessity for both active waiting and passive waiting. And so in your life, have you seen those seasons where you're waiting well in whether passive waiting or active waiting? Like, how are you waiting well in your current season?
Yeah. I will say, sitting and having some peanut butter cookies is not bad. And I know you've said that it's not bad. It's just, the balance of passive and active. Um, I would say for me, in the when I look at active waiting, If that's because I'm not sure what God has next, I'm not sure what that looks like, where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing, I really try to go back to what is the last thing I know God told me to do? Where's the last place God told me to go? And am I doing that well? And again, I don't want to mistake that with busyness. Like, as you're talking, I don't want to mistake it with busyness, but I know that no matter what, God has asked me to love others well. He has asked me to care for and serve others. He has asked me to share his goodness and his grace. And that can come in a lot of forms. That can be, I don't know what this next stage of my life is going to look like, but I can drop off a meal to a new mama who is just exhausted because I know what that's like. Um, you know, I may not be out there, speaking to thousands, but I can make a phone call to a young adult who I know needs some encouragement and needs to be reminded that Jesus loves them and made them to be who they are. And so I think that that's really my thing. Like, what are the core things that I know God has told me to do, and go back to those? Um, because I always want to say, in the small ways, but we know that those add up because I know how those small things have impacted me when people have actively invested in those ways in me. And so if I can continue to do that, um, I know that God is still doing a work in me while I'm waiting for what may be next.
Yes, and he gets to use you in those waiting seasons that you don't know about. Because sometimes I'm the young adult that gets handed a coffee and says, "Here." And that's my favorite part of the week. And those older adults that have more wisdom than me are sitting across just chatting, and I'm gleaning everything I can. And in those moments, you're equipping the becoming in me while you're waiting. I love that.
It's a cool connection to see how that happens, knowing, when I was in my 20s and 30s, and the people that invested in me and going, "Wow, that's so," I'm so grateful that this person took time, like you said, drop off the coffee, the conversation, the text message, those things, and now going, "Wow," like, I'm so grateful that people took those nudgings seriously, and then I'm not gonna ignore those because I do feel like God is using those even in the waiting. He's using those little moments to go, "I still have purpose for you. There is still calling on your life." And so, being faithful in these little things that I nudge you to do, where Holy Spirit is at work, um, I think are invaluable in our life.
I so agree. So, friends, if you aren't listening to the Holy Spirit telling you to do something, you might need to do it. This is just, even if it's give somebody coffee or send them a text message, because you're affecting other people's lives in ways that you have no idea about and probably won't, but they know.
Yes. Yes, and amen. Do it.
Do it. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners today?
Um I just, as I've been listening to your podcast, I was excited to find it after we connected, and hearing all those things. And I know so many times things that come up are like comparison. And I just what I love about listening to the other people that have been sharing your podcast is all of our journeys are different, all of our stories are different. And God has us waiting in so many different ways. So we are becoming in different ways. So we are all made in the image of Christ, but how we're becoming is different. How we are actively waiting is different. And so just that encouragement of like, if your waiting looks just 180 degrees different than mine, that is so awesome, and I'm so excited, and I wanna hear about that waiting. If your becoming is completely different than mine, awesome and exciting, and I wanna hear about that, because that's what makes the body of Christ so unique and so cool, to be a part. Taking everyone's stories and going, "Wow, that is awesome, and it doesn't have to be my story."
That was good. I need my yes button.
Yeah.
I have a button that is hidden because I was having too much fun with it. I need that's like it. That was it. That's the whole podcast. Because we're all becoming and waiting in different seasons. And I'm getting to learn from you guys, and you guys are getting to learn from each other and maybe from me, question mark. And so I'm loving how the Lord is using each and every one of us to affect everybody else's life. Like, we're having this conversation. We don't live anywhere near each other, literally live on opposite coasts.
Opposite coast could not be
Literally.
farther away from each other.
And we're getting to have this conversation, and you're encouraging me, but when I hit publish, it's going to encourage other people too. So you took the nudge and was like, oh, yeah, I want to do that. And I'm loving it. This is how the Lord is moving and working in our lives. And I think it's super awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm wondering if I can ask you a question.
Of course.
If that's okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm just wondering if you would share, like, how are you waiting well in whatever season you're in? What does waiting well look like to you?
Okay, that's a great question. So, one of the fun things about my current season is I'm in the middle of a season. Kind of, you were talking about, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. And so, one of the aspects of the waiting season that I'm in is I'm having to listen to what the Lord is telling me to do, kind of like you were saying. And sometimes I don't like listening to the Lord because what He tells me to do is not fun or it's very uncomfortable. But in the season that I've been in, especially with the podcast and social media, and a lot of what I do is content creation, whether that's writing or guest writing or podcasting. I'm also a virtual assistant in this season and, glorified babysitter for all of my little loves. And it was a very weird season. But in this season, I'm getting to look back at the beginning of where I was at and getting to see the things that the Lord has gotten to work in my life. So, for example, it may not look like it, but I'm 100% a behind the scenes girl. I would rather be serving you coffee than you asking me where my stuff came from. But I like writing the stuff, and I would love to speak on a stage, not because I want to be on stage, but because I love teaching. And so I think the difference in that is I can post content and I can show up at this stage of my waiting with the guarantee that the Lord has it. And He's changed things in my heart and my mind and how I perceive myself so that I'm not as self conscious as to like what I'm putting on social media. So, like, my face being on social media, it doesn't bother me anymore. Me listening to myself talk really doesn't bother me anymore because every time we record a podcast, I get to cut it. And so between the Not Just Waiting podcast and then when we had the Me and Reed podcast, we're up to like 65 podcasts that I've had to listen to myself talk over. And so I'm very curious to see what the Lord is going to do with these skills and giftings that I've had so far, but I'm not 100% sure what He's doing. He might drop something in my lap and I'll be like, that's too good to pass up. But right now, I'm literally waiting and just following what the Lord says. I had a conversation last week with a girl. She's like, hey, I have this opportunity. Would you like to hear about it? And old Rihanna would have been like, I got too much going on. But I answered her, I was like, hey, I'm in a season where I'm waiting to see what the Lord says next. So I'm jumping on every phone call and every random anything just to see if this is where the Lord is calling me. And I'm trying to not let my own biases and opinions get in the way of that. Because if I'm in the way of me and the Lord, there's a big problem. And I'm trying to get out of the way at the moment. So that's the long story of where Rihanna's at in the waiting season.
I love it. I love your openness to just acknowledging and accepting the gifts that you do have, and then open to, I don't know what it looks like, but I'm open to any of it. So I'm going to walk through that door, and if that's not it, okay, great. If that's not it, okay, great. I'm going to just keep trying, and I love that openness about you. And I'm excited to see what God does with that.
Thank you. It's a stark difference from, hi, I was going to be a teacher until I was 63. And then I was going to figure out what I was going to do after that because that was the goal, like forever and ever. And the Lord shut that very quickly. He's like, haha, no, you're not, but you're going to get to use these skills. I was like, okay, cool. So that's where we're
Love-
at.
Yep, I
But
love it.
thank you. Question: where can our listeners connect with you?
Awesome. Thank you for asking. As you mentioned in the beginning, we met through coaching. And so I have social media and a website. I'm Jen Preston Coaching. So I'm pretty easy to find on Instagram, on Facebook, and my website, just Jen Preston Coaching. And I love getting to connect with people, respond to messages, DMs, um, all of those things, and also hear what God's doing in other people's lives.
I think that's super cool. Friends, I will leave all of that in the show notes. If you're like, what if I spell it wrong? I got you. It's going to be in the show notes. And you heard Jen say, please message me. Please DM me.
Please message
Please
me. Yes.
contact her for coaching because she's amazing. and all the other
Hey.
things you might need. So definitely go DM her and say thank you for being on the podcast, first off. Secondly, go tell her what the Lord's doing in your life and maybe ask how you can, like, get connected with her because she's amazing. Jen, this was so much fun. Let's do it again. And I want to ask 17 million other questions, but we probably shouldn't do that on the podcast. So
Amen, 100%. I just want to say thank you to you for all the work that you're doing with your podcast and the people that you're bringing together, and what you're sharing has really been phenomenal. So thank you for being faithful in that, even not knowing what's next for you.
thank you. That's very kind. I needed that today. Well, friends, it's been a joy and a privilege, and we will see you guys next week. Bye, friends. Thanks for listening to the Not Just Waiting podcast. I hope today reminded you that even in the in-between, God is working, and you are not alone. If this episode encouraged you, would you share it with a friend? And don't forget to hit follow so you never miss a moment of truth, hope, and real conversation. You can find me on Instagram at rihanna.ivy.hoff and join the community over on Substack for deeper reflections and weekly encouragement. Until next time, take heart, friend. God is in the waiting with you.